now live.
Great.
I'm going to share this on YouTube. Yep, we're ready to go. And I'm now also going to be sharing this on LinkedIn, and give me a second here. And let's see, Aunt Alfredo. All right, let's go.
Great. All right. So, yeah. So it's great to be here again, Noah, doing some cool stuff. So what the idea today is that I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna do some terminal stuff and show some shortcuts, stuff that I do in my everyday, and hopefully that serves as a good foundation. So I'm gonna
Yeah, maybe just like a brief overview of what we're going to be doing. So the idea here is that it's going to be mostly Thursdays around 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to start at the beginning and tell you every single thing we know. So that's the goal is start like step by step, every possible thing we can teach block by block, how to do programming, how to do cloud computing, how to do DevOps. And so this is episode 2. And if you stay tuned every Thursday at about 8 o'clock, eventually we'll be a few hundred episodes in. Okay, so that's the context.
All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do some terminal action here. There's a bunch of different things that are very useful on my day to day. So this is my the computer that I do work in every day, and I've been primarily a Python developer, just like Noah, for a while. And there's a bunch of different nifty tricks that you can do. And now I use my uh, my shell is C shell, but none of the examples here are specific to C shell. Like Bash will work fine. Actually, it's not a problem. But the first thing I want to show you is cool things that you can do with Git. Git has a bunch of subcommands. Actually, it can be pretty silly because it doesn't like -h, but it has a bunch of subcommands, and a lot of you might know a few of these. You have show, log, grep, commit, of course, and checkout, which is the Swiss knife of Git. So you can do a lot of things here that are interesting, but a cool trick is that if you have anything in your path that is git dash something, that thing after the dash will turn into a git subcommand. So you can put any executable there and it will become a subcommand. So let me show you a couple of examples. So if I go to bin, this is my home directory. Actually, I don't have it here, but like we can try it out pretty quickly. But and before we do that, there's a bunch of aliases that I have that are available in git config. This is the global this is the global git config, and we'll go through a bunch of these. So that's my user. This is what the default for everything whenever you're creating a new repository, you're doing some new stuff, then this is what we'll get for default. But I have a bunch of aliases, and the aliases are can work the same as something like a subcommand. And I have this one that is pretty nifty here called work profile. And what that does is that it will change. So let me exit out of here. So say, for example, I go to my Python directory. I have a bunch of directories there. Let's assume that I have, let's create a new repository. So I do work repo, and then we get in there, work repo, git init. Great. So we have an empty repository. Git status, there's no commits on branch master. That's perfect. But like, this is a work repository, and sometimes at work you might be able, you might be required to sign your commits. If you're signing your commits, then you have to, your username will be recorded and your email. So if this is a work repo, you probably want to use your work email address. Actually, if we list all of the files here, you'll see that there's a .git directory. If we go in there, there's a config, and we can try to see what's in there in that config. It's pretty empty. So like what happens here is that you will most of the options will come from from the default parent or global Git configuration, which is what I showed you in the beginning. So if I say, for example, if I want to do a commit here, let's say, for example, I'm going to create a README file, and then I'm going to add that README file, and I'm going to commit. I'm going to say, this is the first commit, and then if I do git log, then this is my default name and email address, which is the one coming from the global Git config. So let's say, for example, this is, I want to change these. I am actually, I want to use my work profile. I have a different email address. So I do git work, look at that, it even auto-completes work profile. And this is actually an alias. So I'm defining work profile in my Git config, and that becomes an alias. And if I do that, this will actually modify the Git configuration here that is local to this repository. So only for this repository, so it's not messing anything up. So now you can see that the local direct repository now has my work profile email in there. So this is pretty.
Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. That's pretty cool. So basically what you're doing is you have in your main Git configuration file like a master command that you can actually source, and then you can source it when you have a new repo, and it'll just write it into the new repo. Is that basically what it's doing?
Yeah,
wow.
Basically. And this is and this can be either a single line or it can be a script. So if I do git work profile, I think this works. If like I do -- help. Well, I didn't like that. Maybe how about -h? Sometimes there we go. If I do -h, look at that. Work profile is alias to config user. So it knows what it is. Like it knows how to get that information for us and tells exactly what it is. In this case, this is an alias. It's not a script. But there's other nifty stuff in there. So let's take a look at another thing. I usually do a bunch of rebases, and so let's find a way. Let's find a way to do a rebase. So say, for example, a rebase is just basically overwriting history. You want to, like, if you want to say, if this is a Python project and you're, I'm going to have a set of a py file here, and then I'm going to say the Python project is going to be actually work. So I'm going to touch repo init.py and say, for example, that you now have, I have two file, directory and two files. and they're untracked. So if I wanted to, if I fumble and I say I add setup.py and then commit that, and I say adding setup.py, and then I say, oh, well, I forgot. I do git status. I forgot to add repo. Oh man, so I'm gonna add that now and commit that. And I'm gonna say, adding repo directory. So now if we look at the log, now I have adding setup.py, and this is the first commit, and adding repo directory. But like it might be redundant. I might want to like change things a little bit. I'm like, well, I don't like these. Everything should be the first commit. So what you can do is this rebase -i origin master. You hit return. Well, actually, we don't have an origin. I think if we go and try to create, I think it's git remote. I think it's add upstream at origin. No. Do you remember what's the command to add an origin? I always rely on GitHub doing this for me.
Yeah, I think you do git remote -v to show all of the remotes.
Yeah, but I don't have any, right?
Yeah, and then you would do I think it is git add remote origin. I think it's git remote add, and then you would just put in the origin and then the URL.
Yeah, so this is because this is basically because I don't have a URL. This is an empty repository. So actually, I actually have a good example. I think it's called bare bones. No, JFormat. So JFormat is a pretty good, like this is a good repo of mine. This is public, by the way, so we'll see remote-b. So if you guys are want to follow these, github.com/alfredodeza/JFormat, like that will get you there. It's a pretty simple project that I use to explain certain things with repositories, so we can actually try these right now. So, like I said, I wanted to rebase. I wanted to change stuff. So let's take a look at here. Create new README file, sample test, initial commit. So, say for example, we want to make this create new README file. So if I go to README file, this is a README file, and this is a tool for learning, and I forgot to add that, and now this has been modified. So I'm going to add it. I'm going to commit, and then I'm going to say adding more stuff to the README. Those two last entries are not very good. So I prefer to have everything here. Create a new README file. It's redundant to have more stuff there. So I'm gonna rebase. So if I do git rebase -i, so this is interactive rebasing. So I can pick and choose and reword. So what I usually do is to get this one here, adding more stuff, to be merged onto or squashed onto the previous commit. So to do that, if you follow here the little help menu, which is pretty neat, what you do there is you use F or fix up. So if we go up and say, instead of pick, I'm gonna do fix up, or you can actually just do F. So what this will do is it will make this disappear onto the other one. Now, we can actually try that and see what happens. If I right quit this, and then I do git log again, create a new README file now has everything that makes it the last commit. But sometimes I'm creating a bunch of different commits, or if I go and I make a pull request and I get some feedback and say, hey, Alfredo, you made some typos. You actually need to remove that last line. It doesn't make sense. So I remove it. And then I find myself going back and forth doing the following: git add readme, and then git commit dash m saying fixing readme, and then doing a git rebase. So like I keep this history clean, and then I want to get rid of these. And again, so I go back and forth, back and forth. But this is not a very useful workflow. So what you can do here is something where I added like a subcommand, which is a more involved alias. So let's take a look at my home directory with git config. So there is this this commit f thing, which is looks pretty involved, and actually in retrospect, it should be this should be a script, but I decided to make it an embedded alias. So that's why you have all of those backticks. And this is what it is. Like I don't really like Bash, but this works well enough for a few lines. So first, like this is almost like an anonymous function, and here I define the path, and then I do git log of whatever path. Like it's accepting an argument, which is a path, and then it's doing git log and showing me what's the latest entry for that path, then doing git status, and then it's sleeping for 3 seconds. That allows me to say, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that looks good. Or gives me a buffer so I can control C and exit out of this process. Then it will add it. It will add this file that has changed, and then it captures what the previous log message, the previous commit message was in the log, and then it commits that, prefixing it with F. So I know if I have 100 commits, I know which one to look for, and then rebase. So let's see how this works. So again, if I do git log, I have fixing readme, and let's actually get rid of let's get rid of this one, like I show you how to do with F. So git log now just shows create a new README file. So Noah comes in and says, let's take a look at your README file. And you know, you should actually you should edit the title, a tool, and then save it, and then that's great. So now I have this file modified there, and what I can do is I can say git commit F, and I'm gonna reset the terminal so you can see it better. Git commit F. I'm gonna say readme, and that shows me the last entry, waits for 3 seconds, and commits for me. If I do git status, then it has committed, but so things look quite normal, but like behind the scenes, if I do git log, it has basically created the same message. So why is this useful? Because if I do the git rebase, I know that this is exactly the one that I have to rebase on top. Like imagine that you have 50 of these commits, so everything with a different commit message, and you have one here and the other one at the bottom. Not good, because it's pretty tricky to know which one switch. So now I do, oh, it's this one. Okay, perfect. So I can just save, and then off we go. So you can do, like, this is probably like a silly example, but you can do a bunch of different things, aliases, all, like I even have stuff that I was tinkering with that I don't do anymore, but there's all kind, like aliases is just a very good way Well, see, you can see Whelp. I added this because like it was a time where like sometimes it's just really tricky to get things right, and this basically allows me to undo my last commit. So if I do git Whelp and status, it tells me, yeah, you have a new file. Like we don't know what happened. So it allows me to unstage that and get rid of the last commit.
Hmm.
So that's pretty useful. And
I wonder if it would be useful to show people just what an alias is in Z shell, just like what is
yes,
an alias, period.
yes, absolutely. So just like in Git, you can have all of these aliases. C shell, Bash, most shells allows you to have aliases. I
IPython,
have,
IPython
yeah.
has alias.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That would be pretty. I think we could do a whole section on powerful IPython stuff that is pretty useful to know. They always keep adding new stuff. So for um, so actually, just before we go to aliases, like let's go to Vim and say we're gonna add a git foo. I'm gonna say this is a Vim bash. So this is just a regular script. When I change the mod so everyone can execute these. And now this should work. There we go. So foo becomes, just because git dash foo is in my path, it becomes a command. So you can add a bunch of there and automatically will show up. Pretty useful way to expand on your shell and on actually Git. So Noah brought an important question, which was actually what I wanted to go in next. You can have a bunch, like just like in Git, we have the ability to have these aliases. You can also have aliases in your shell. So say, for example, one that I use a lot. If you want to change directories, so say, for example, if I go to change a format and I'm in tests and I'm here, and if you want to go back up the stack, like you could do something like that. You change directories // and then I think that kind of gets you. Yeah, well, that got me all the way back. But like, so I have an alias, so I can do just .. So let's see. I think if I do that, oops. I think if I do that, oh man, I messed that up. Let's see. Which with aliases you can actually tell that. There we go. So that the shell will tell you that this thing is alias to CD. So let's I have a bunch of different and useful aliases that I'll show you how they work, and then you can source them. And these are all publicly available. We'll go into that repo in a second, but
And for somebody that's a total beginner to the shell, an alias is like a bookmark. So it's like you go to Chrome or Firefox or Safari, and then you go to a website and you're like, boy, I want to go there again. And then you just bookmark it. And it's the same thing. You just put a name and you call it something, and then it runs the command again. And if you put it in a config file like the ZSHRC, then they'll all just populate and autocomplete.
Yeah, so these are a bunch of the useful aliases that I have. And just by having these in your bash RC or C shell RC, which is the special configuration file for your shell, and it's usually in your home directory, which is I think for bash is bash
Bash RC.
Yeah, bash RC. For C shell is C shell RC. Just by defining these like that, they become available.
So one, I don't know if you have these, but one trick that I do that I like is that I have an alias called EZ, and can you
what does it do?
It edits Z shell. So I edit it so much that I just type in EZ, and then EZ opens up Vim. It just says Vim
Nice.
tilde slash. And then when I want to source the changes, I type in rehash, which is RH,
Yeah,
which
right.
like, and so like those are two of my most commonly used is basically edit Z shell, make some changes, make a new alias, then RH, which is reloaded. Or I mean,
Yeah.
so you could do some variant. I don't know if you've done something similar to
Well,
that.
I've here, like, it's funny you mentioned these because I do that with Vim. So
Okay.
I have vimrc, and it will open the vimrc, which is the configuration file for Vim. I mean, not quite the same, but still kind of like sort
Maybe
of like a,
I can spark an idea like, maybe it's
yeah.
not a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah. So, and there's a bunch, like I've used Vim throughout the years so much that if I do -q, it will just close the close the terminal for me. So it makes it a valid command. PG and PGI is useful for me because then allows me to grep, like if you're grepping for, if you do PG, if I do PG right now, well, actually PS, if I do PS, it tells me all of the different applications that I have. So if you want to grep for one, say, let's say, for example, let's look if there's anything for Python, grep Python. So there's nothing. But what happens here is that it still spits out grep Python because that's part, like it became a process when it was doing the PS. So PG allows me to do that. Basically, which PG allows me to PS and then remove the actual grep command, and then grep for whatever I was passing in. So a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
different things. Aliases are pretty powerful. Now let's go back to J format. So in Python, we rely a lot in virtual environments, and I think I have one for J format. So let me create a virtual environment. I'm going to do this standard way. I have a bunch of different aliases and helpers for this thing, but I'm going to try to do it like someone that is just starting out would do it. So that would be Python 3-m VM, which calls the virtual environment or VM module from Python 3. And I'm going to say create a VM directory here that contains the virtual environment. So I'm going to do that. This goes behind the scenes and does a bunch of different things. It's kind of frustrating a little bit because it doesn't mention anything. But what that gives us is that there's a VM directory here, which these special files, and specifically one that is pretty important, which is activate. So if I activate that, and before I activate, like if I do which Python, you can see that it's /user being Python. I don't want to use that. I want to use the one in my virtual environment. So I do source VM being activate, and now if I do which Python, it changes. Now you can see it's Alfredo /Python J format. Like basically, it's the one that has been created there. Like that allows me to blow it away. I remember the first time Noah showed me about virtual environments and why they were useful. I really didn't understood it quite well until I started getting into problems installing dependencies and getting into conflicts and not being able to blow them away. So this is
well, and so the one thing that I've been toying with is what's the right convention to create a virtual environment. In my opinion, is that if you're using a Linux type system, that I would always recommend that you create the name of the virtual environment as the same name as your Git repo and put it as an invisible file in your home directory.
Yeah.
And there's a couple reasons why this is, I think, a good strategy. One is that then you never have to remember what the name is of your virtual environment. What's your name of your virtual environment? It's the same name as your repo. Plus, the other thing that happens, so that solves one problem. The second problem is that you don't want the virtual environment in your Git checkout. It's very common for cloud-based environments as well to accidentally check in the virtual environment. things blow up and you're like, uh-oh, what happened?
Yeah.
And then so that solves that problem. And then the third one is like, it's just irritating. Like, just get that thing out of there. Just, I
Yeah.
don't want to look at the virtual environment. Just make it go away. And then so that's three things. And then what I typically do is, going back to aliases, then I go into my ZSH RC or bash RC, and I will type in the name of the repo as the alias. So let's say in your case you had JFormat, that would be an alias, and it would cd into the path to where the checkout is, and it would do and
Mhm.
it would source the virtual environment. And then what's great is, then if I use that kind of convention, I never have to remember what I'm doing. I always just say the name of the repo, and it just checks me into it and checks me into the virtual
I
environment.
think that's a pretty nifty idea. I have something similar where I have all of my virtual environments in one directory that is hidden, and all of
Mhm.
these are like that. And I rely on conventions to activate a bunch of different stuff there. But because we want to demonstrate how aliases work, and I don't have anything that, like you've said, like let's actually do that. Let's actually deactivate from here, remove VM, and I'm brand new. I don't have my virtual environment, and let's try to follow Noah's conventions. So I'm going to go and create a virtual environment again. So -m VM, and instead of creating it here with the name VM, I'm gonna use my home directory, and this is going to be called JFormat. So like that. So it's hidden. Like the dot allows you to hide that away. So let's create that. And now let's create the alias. And I think we can do it on the fly here, so we don't need to resource the file. So the what the alias is, that would be the name of the project, right, Noah? So JFormat.
Yep.
And then here um, it would be change directories, right, to where the
Yeah,
project is.
I would cd where the checkout is,
All right, so that's that, and then you would do
like a double ampersand.
right.
Yeah, and then I would source.
You would need to source the JFormat
Exactly.
bin,
Yep, exactly.
so like that.
Exactly.
All right. So if I do which JFormat, oh, it didn't didn't like that. Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I shouldn't use backticks.
Yeah, I think you would just use like a regular quote.
So let's try that. So I'm gonna remove these backticks and use that. Otherwise, if it gives us problems, we can always do it the formal way. There we go.
There we go.
It is quotes. So perfect.
Yeah, it's easy to be like, wait, which way do I quote again?
Yeah. Yeah, if it's not backticks, it's single quotes, otherwise double quotes. One of those always will get the thing done. So now if I type JFormat, there we go. So a couple of things have happened. My prompt has changed to JFormat. And now if I do which Python, it's basically the convention of that Noah follows in his environments, which is having the name of the project. That's pretty nifty, in a way that we've created aliases on the fly. That, I mean, the ideal situation is that you would have this alias in your bash RC or C shell RC, so that you don't need to type this, because once I close the terminal, that alias is just temporary and it goes away. Now let's dive a little bit further. So the Python installer here, it's also specific to this virtual environment. And now what we can do here is we are going to install some dependencies. So I don't think I have any dependencies here. So I'm going to do Python setup.py develop. Yeah, I know dependencies. So let's install a bunch of stuff. So I like pip install pytest. I'm going to say IPython, both of which things that I really use. It goes, downloads a bunch of different stuff. And I'll show you a couple of functions that I have that are really, really useful. First of all, now we have the JFormat project over here, but I could be relying on something else, or I could be in some other project somewhere else. So say, for example, I am in, well, I didn't know I had PyTest checked out. Look at that. That's the PyTest project. So let's assume I'm here and I'm like working on this other project. I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on here. Where's this JFormat thing? Like it's in a different path. Like I wonder what it is. So I have this alias called CDP, which is actually a function. Aliases, or actually you can source functions and they become commands. So if I do CDP, it's a shortcut that changes directory to where a package is defined. So like I have the JFormat project, and I'm going to do JFormat, and it will take me, so behind the scenes, this is importing JFormat and figuring out where that import is coming. So I could even do CDP OS, like the Python OS module, and look at this. It's going to put me inside where the actual Python installation is. And if I do PyTest, which I think is a little bit weird. Yeah, well, we can go back to JFormat, and that puts me back where I was. So let's take a look how that works and why. Like if I do which CDP, it'll spit out the whole function. So this is a function, and you can just actually copy paste this into your C# RC or Bash RC file, and then that'll just work. So this is mixing a little bit of Python and Bash, which, you know, it's not something that I tend to do much, but for this specific use case, it's pretty good. So let's walk through what this thing is doing. So first off, is like if my module or whatever I'm passing in has dashes, it will convert it to underscores, because what this thing is doing is importing that. Dashes like this one are forbidden in Python, and you need to have underscores. So it goes through the assumption that if you have, say, for example, if this was J dash format, or it was JFormat tool, then the assumption is that this would be, the module will be transformed to underscores. But then it does an exec with Python. So it sets up this variable called module directory and executes Python3-C, and then it does this exec, which is basically import. It imports path, and then it tries to import the module. The module, again, it's the one argument. So in this case, when I did JFormat, that becomes the first argument, and then it tries to import it. And look at that, there's a try and except. So if there's an exception, so say, for example, CDP foobar, which doesn't exist, look at that, module foobar was not found, or it's not importable, no module. So that message is coming from right here, because the try except fails, and it prints the exception. I capture it here and I say, hey, you know, like this didn't work, and this is the error. So just now you can see a powerful combination of doing this, mixing a little bit, just a tiny little bit of Python. I mean, this is almost palatable, that allows you to do nifty things like CDP. Now, remember I installed PyTest and I installed IPython. A thing that keeps happening a bunch of times is that you perhaps are trying to, like, you don't know where dependency is coming from, or where was it installed. Sometimes virtual environments are created in such a way that dependencies might be coming from the system. So I have a thing called, I think it's called whelp as well. Yeah, there we go. So it tries to gather. This is another function. Again, you just copy paste these, you drop it in your configuration file for your shell, and just does all of these for you. So it imports package resources and starts poking inside and see what's going on. So let's try what happens now. Which if I do whelp and I do say for example IPython. So there's not a module called IPython. I actually don't know what the module is, but it tells me what the version is. So IPython is actually registered as an actual package in my dependencies, and it's able to tell me the version. But maybe PyTest will allow me to. There we go. So PyTest, it tells me, hey, I found it. This is the path to where this thing is coming from, and this is the version. This is pretty useful when you're having to deal with a bunch of different dependencies and a bunch of different things installed everywhere. So I've had issues where, for example, say PyTest was not installed there, it was installed somewhere else, and it was causing problems because it couldn't find my modules. And like if I show you, we can go, I think it's here. So these are just conventions, but you could do the one important thing is that if you have these things defined in your C shell RC, look at that. I have an alias to clean stuff. You can define aliases here. If like this is another alias, but you can separate, like if you have too many aliases like I do, you can have separate files and then source them, which is totally able to do with different shells as well. So again, by like say PyClean, because Python leaves a bunch of PYC files around and things that you don't like, then you can use that as well. And you can do, look at that, CSV to JSON. I have a bunch of these different ones. This one will grab a CSV file and convert it to JSON. I actually think that this example went into the Python for DevOps book that we wrote, Noah. But then again, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do here. And let's take a look at my C shell RC. I have, like, it depends on what's useful to you. Like if it's not useful to you, or you're gonna use it a lot, then it's not, you start becoming cluttered and it's not good. So here I have an alias for timestamp, which is useful. It will just create a timestamp. VSET is also pretty nifty. It runs Vim, and it does a search and replace with confirmation. So Vim has a thing where it not only does a search and replace, but it will confirm. It will tell you, hey, do you really want to do this search and replace? It'll just go recursively going to match a pattern and replace it, which is pretty. Actually, when we try that, it's pretty nifty to see. But I don't know. Let's see. Let's go back to where JFormat is, and let's say, for example, let's see, rep format. Let's see what a little bit of this. Let's say string. So if we wanted to replace string, we could do vset. I want to match string and replace it with actually underscore input, and I'm gonna do this for every Python file. So this looks for string, we'll replace it with underscore input for every Python file recursively. If I run that, oh bummer, this is too long. It didn't like it. Oh, it's because I'm in Python, not like, yeah. So this has the limitation that if you have several dozen files here with hundreds of Python files, this will not work. So I'm going to go to JFormat now. Let's run this again. All right. So it goes through all of my Python files and it prompts me replace with input. You can see that at the bottom. So you can say yes, no, or continue. So if I say N, if I press N, it will just skip, and they will go. Like now it loaded the next file, and I'm gonna say, let's say yes. Let's see what happens. Look at that. It starts changing that, and now I can say no, this one no, no, and then I'm done. I'm gonna write all of these, and then if I do git diff, it has changed. It has changed whatever it's like. This is good, useful for me when I'm doing a bunch of refactorings that are pretty silly, like one word changing into another one for multiple different files, and sometimes don't match. You could see that some of those strings were in comments, not useful.
You know what else would be cool? I was just thinking is you could build like a cognitive ability test as like, you know, just as you get older, you could have something that pops up pictures and it would just like, and you just randomly pop up an elephant. And if you can recognize it, you're good. You know, like it's just elephant, like cognitive test. And then if an elephant pops up and you're like, hey, that's an elephant, that means you're good. That means like everything's all good.
Great. So I think that's a bunch of useful content. I mean, none of these things are really meant to be, you know, like taken like explicitly, like just as they were. Like these are just useful examples. And actually, one thing that I didn't show was if I do Firefox. Let me open that. And if I do github.com, Alfredo, and then I think I have my dot files here. So if I do dot files, there we go. So my dot files do have a bunch of different, most of what you saw here today, the C shell RC file, of the aliases, some of the aliases that we saw here are the ones that we used to change directories. Look at this. This is for copying a key. Sometimes copy key is not defined. Again, if you have a function, like this will become the command. So look at that, fix, because the Bluetooth was not working at some point with my computer, so I had to add a function there. Again, all these things pretty useful to know, and then you don't need to really you just keep adding whatever works for you. So that's it. That's thank you so much for watching this, and I think it becomes useful to you.
Great. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon. See you later.